Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana. Senator, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
So you know the poll numbers. I don't have to tell you about that. What does that mean to the people in your state? How do you sell this tax plan to them?
I tell them the truth, the good part and the bad part. I think the poll numbers are a reflection of a couple of things. I think any reasonable person would look at the media coverage, and media has done its job, and most of the media has been negative. I'm not fussing about that. That's just a fact. Number two, the bill has changed a lot. I think a lot of folks don't really understand yet what's in it, not because they're not smart, but because it's just changed. I mean, I probably spent, I don't know, 300 hours on this legislation trying to keep up with the changes. But I'll tell you this, the conference committee report made this bill better. Senator Rubio, Senator Lee, in my opinion, did the American people a great service by increasing the child tax credit. We cleaned up some of the problems. For example, we're not going to tax tuition waivers for graduate students. We're not going to remove teachers' deduction for out-of-pocket spending on classroom materials. We're going to expand parents' ability to use a 529 program. A lot of the stuff that never made sense to me,
right?
We cleaned up, and I think once folks learn that, they'll be appreciative.
Yeah,
go ahead,
Senator. I think that the fundamental problem here was not one of your making. This was sold as being something that would be designed to advantage the middle class the most. And it is very difficult to look at this bill's architecture and see it that way, not just because of what you just pointed out that needed to be fixed, but the theory here seems to be pretty obvious. We will help the top tier the most because we believe that they, in turn, will help the middle class. That's the sell on this. It's not that we are advantaging the middle class as the president promised, and we're going to put it on the backs of the rich, let them pay even more. That's not what was done.
A couple of points. You make a good one, but a couple of points. I don't think you ought to make tax policy on the basis of class warfare. I think you ought to make tax policy on the basis of sound economic principles. Number two, this bill does help ordinary people. Doubling the standard deduction, doubling the child tax credit, lowering the tax rates. Number three, what helps American people the most is giving them access to a quality job. I think this bill will do that. It's going to cut taxes on every single business, and there are two impacts of that haven't been talked about a lot. Number one, I think it's going to increase foreign direct investment by 50%. A lot of out of this country capital is going to come into America. Number two, when we allow small business people to expense their new buildings and equipment and software rather than depreciate them, that's going to help their business grow. What does that mean? That means that they're going to add workers, add jobs.
Maybe.
That means, well, I believe it will.
I know. I'm not saying you don't believe it, but they're maybes, Senator. They're maybes.
I concede that. But as you add jobs, wage pressure is going to go up. And the other impact of buying that new software, workers are going to become more productive. The real problem with wages, Chris, has been that our productivity growth ought to be about 2%. For the past 8 years, it's been 1%. Right. And given our demographics, we're all getting older. We're not adding workers, so we got to make the current workers more productive before you see a wage increase. And that's a long-winded way of saying that I believe, if I'm wrong, I'll come back on your show and say I was wrong and here's why. But I believe that a rising tide does lift all boats. This isn't a zero-sum game. You don't make the middle class better by making the upper middle class poorer or vice versa. We all ought to rise together.
No, I hear you. It's just at the end of the day, there are a lot of maybes in there, and I'm not going to say that you're wrong about them because I don't have any better data about the future than you do. But the corporate tax cuts are permanent. The ones for individuals and the families of people who put you in office are temporary.
You're right.
And that's because there was a preference given to the corporations that the individuals didn't get. I know there are reasons for that, but that's going to be something they're going to have to swallow.
Well, 2 points. Number one, I would have liked to have made the personal income tax cuts permanent, but as you know, we had the $1.5 trillion guardrail. Number two, President Bush's tax cuts were temporary too.
Right.
They were renewed, and I feel very confident, no matter who's in power, that these tax cuts for ordinary people will be renewed. I honestly believe that this bill is going to add between 0.5 point and a full point to gross domestic product, and you're going to see foreign direct investment go up 50%. If I'm wrong, I'll admit you're right. Economic forecasting is more art than science.
No, I don't. Listen, just to be clear about one thing, Senator. I don't want to be right about this.
I'm
just saying that
I don't want you to be right either.
You have to question the priorities and the choices that are made. That's my only point. But while I have
Fair point.
I do have to point out your questioning of a judge nominee that took place. Let me play a little bit for people to remind them of what was happening.
Have you ever tried a jury trial?
I have not.
Civil?
No.
Criminal?
No.
Bench?
No.
State or federal court?
I have not.
Do you know what a motion in limine is?
I would probably not be able to give you a good definition right.
Do you know what the Younger abstention doctrine is?
I've heard of it, but how
about the Pullman abstention doctrine?
I heard.
You'll all see that a lot in federal court. Okay.
Senator, did you anticipate taking this man down the way you did when you went in there?
No, sir. Look, I had read Mr. Peterson's FBI background check. He's a very smart guy. He's honest, lots of integrity, but he doesn't have any trial experience, and that's what a trial judge, a federal district court judge, does. I think the president has made some outstanding appointments to the federal judiciary. Nobody's perfect. My job on the Judiciary Committee is to help catch mistakes that might come through, and I just don't. I say this respectfully, but I just don't think Mr. Peterson is ready to be a trial judge. I tried. I don't think they were gotcha questions. Your clip didn't show this, but one of the questions I asked him about the Doe-Bear case. I say Doe-Bear, some say Dober, but I'm from Louisiana. We say Doe-Bear.
Right.
That's like Marbury versus Madison.
Right. It's about whether or not when you have the exceptions to when a federal court will review state court decisions, and it carved out certain things, as did Pullman. I get it. I get why you were asking the questions. I was just shocked at the answers. I mean, motion in limine is something you learn in law school. It was weird. Now, is it true that the president contacted you to say, what did he say?
He called me Friday. He said, look, Kennedy, do your job, man. I'm not upset. He said, do your job. He said, what do you think we ought to do? And I said, Mr. President, I would ask Mr. Peterson to step down. I don't want to see him suffer anymore. And he said, I think that's what we'll do. And he said, just keep doing your job. And I said, I really appreciate that, Mr. President. And then I said, I understand you don't interview these candidates. I brought it up. He didn't, and he doesn't. Presidents don't interview federal district court judge nominees. They're busy doing other stuff. But I said, look, I appreciate it, Mr. President. And then we started talking about taxes. We talked about tax reform mostly.
Well, Senator, that was really classic what you did there. I was joking before the segment. I'm really not joking. You could be a New Day anchor the way you were interviewing that judge nominee. It was really interesting, and I liked your line about how watching My Cousin Vinny doesn't qualify you to be a federal judge. It's good that you put that controversy to rest.
It wasn't personal, and let me say again, I think Mr. Peterson's a very smart guy, and he's very capable, but you're smart too, Chris, but I wouldn't ask you to transplant a kidney in the morning. Experience matters.
You are a wise man, Senator Kennedy, especially if it was your kidney that we were talking about. I wouldn't ask me to do that too. Listen, the best to you and your family for Christmas. You are an enduring example of how people can disagree, they can have different ideas, but they can do it with decency. And you prove that time and again on this show, and you are always welcome here.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks a lot.
All right. The best to you, sir.